So we have all of our patterns, and I'm now going to give these a quick review before we create our DXF output files. So I'm in the pattern environment, and I'm going to come down and click on Review. And as soon as I do, all of the patterns get laid out in their flat 2D shape. So I now want to go ahead and take a look up here in the right-hand corner. I'm going to turn on and off all of these boxes here to show you the information that will display when you go to review your patterns. So first of all, we've got the two defaults that are always on. We've got the perimeter of our patterns, which is highlighted in blue, and then we've got the number, which is also the pattern name, so turn that on and off. I'll leave these two on the entire time, and we'll run through and talk about all of these other things right now. First, we have corner nodes, which have just become highlighted in pink when I check the box. Now, these are important for several different reasons. First of all, when NDN creates the DXF output patterns, NDN will run a spline along every edge of every pattern, and those splines start and stop at each corner node. So if your corner nodes are not correct, the splines that go into creating those patterns will also not be correct. Another reason is for your seam types, which we'll take a look at next. Seam types are only allowed to change at corner nodes. So again, if your corner nodes are messed up, your seam types are going to be messed up. So it's best to take a quick look and make sure that all of your corner nodes get highlighted. And just for example, these two corner nodes are in fact the same node. So if you were to turn on corner nodes and this node is highlighted and this node isn't, you would know that something's going wrong in there and you want to take a closer look. So give everything a quick review. If all of your corner nodes are highlighted, you know everything's good. Go ahead and move on to the next section. I'll turn off corner nodes. Now we can jump down to seam types. And this just displays the seam types that we applied to the perimeter of all of our patterns. Again, you want to make sure that your seams that match up with one another have the same seam type. This all looks good across the interior. I've got my lap seam. Everywhere around the perimeter is rope edge. That's what I assigned. Turn that off. Next we have top, which displays the top surface of all patterns in blue, the bottom surface of all patterns in green. If you discovered in here that any of these were upside down by accident, you can come over here to top surface and correct those right here in the review. Turn this off. Next we have our warp orientation, and when you check that box, you'll notice you get an arrow that indicates your warp orientation for every pattern. These are all lined up parallel to one another. That's exactly what I wanted. And again, if this was incorrect, you can come down here and go to warp direction to change that right here in the review portion of patterning. Turn that off. Next thing we have is Decomp, and this stands for decompensation. Now, compensation and decompensation are two topics that we leave completely up to each individual user because everybody has their own very specific ways they like to do this. But real quick, just for example, I'll click Finish. Compensation is set when we're in setup, and if you want, you can put compensation right here when you create your patterns. So compensation is the amount you want to shrink your patterns up just a little bit to make sure they fit nice and snug and give you the correct pre-stress. Click OK. Come back to review. Now, decompensation is where along the edges you might want to take some of that out so that you can actually install it, get it all hooked up exactly the way it should be. If I wanted to assign any decompensation to any of my seams, I'll come down, I'll click Finish. Back in the main pattern environment, I'll come into Decompensate, and then it's right in here where you can assign the percent of the compensation you want to take out, and then also the blend length moving inward from the edges that you're going to use that decompensation. I'm going to click Finish. I'm going to come back to Review. And now we move on to the next one, which is Width. Simply displays the width of all of your patterns. Turn that off. Next we have Triangulation, and this displays the 2D triangles that NDN is using to create your patterns. Now, triangulation is a lot of times best to look at outside of Review. I'm going to click Finish. And now you can actually see how the full 3D structure looks with those 2D triangles rendered. If you look at this and you have large areas where your 2D triangles come away from your nice 3D shape, that's when you might want to consider redoing your patterns to either be narrower or possibly using a different method for creating your patterns, such as creating your patterns by element as just one example. Okay, I'll come back into the review. I'll turn this off. Next thing we have is area, just gives you a numerical readout of the area of each pattern. And then finally, we've got each pattern highlighted in a different color. Click finish. So that's the quick review. All of that information can be viewed with the structure both rendering in 3D as well as 2D. Once you're happy with your patterns, we can now move over and create our DXF output files.